Hey everyone, we are live. This is Masculine Geek number 25, and we have returning special guest, Rollo Tomassi. Welcome, sir.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
It's going well. Glad to have you back.
Yeah. It's a little hot
Why
in
is
here.
Rob rocking and laughing?
No idea.
And then TJ's muted. All right. Well,
I'm not muted.
no, you were muted. You're fine now. Yeah. This is a fantastic start to this.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I'll be brief.
You'll be brief.
No.
15 minutes later.
I know we've been talking off air for the last like 20 minutes.
We pretty much shot our wads, so
this is the afterglow now.
Yep, it is hot in here, right?
Fuck, I'll tell you what.
That's right. All right, cool. So, tell us what you've been working on lately, and we also want to lead you off with Geek Intel because you have some cool miniatures to show us.
Oh yeah. We can get to
fun.
that.
Okay, let's do that. This is the good
stuff. We don't have to get to that right now. You want me to show off some of my stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. But you can give a preamble first.
Well, you guys asked me to do this like last time I was on. God, when was the last time I was on? Wasn't it like January or something?
No,
it was February or March.
I think it was in March.
Yeah, you were number 13. You were number 13.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 13. And then you guys asked, gosh, you guys, what's funny is like, I fully expect you guys to come up with like some, like, we know that you're into like Taekwondo when you were 19. I'm like, where the hell did you guys find all this stuff? You know?
On your blog?
I know. Am I that easy to find? Yeah, on my blog, I guess maybe it would be. And then so like you guys hit me up last time and I wasn't prepared because I didn't know you guys were going to hit me up for like my miniature painting and stuff like that. But
absolutely. Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I like coming on with you guys is like we don't have to talk about everything red pill. It can be just like a personal thing. So
absolutely, and that's where we want to go for too. Yeah.
I have been playing Warhammer 40,000 since 1989. 1990, somewhere around there is when I picked up playing the game. Actually, I didn't even play 40K in the beginning. I played this game called Space Hulk, which was absolutely. It still is to this day. I still have everything from the first edition of Space Hulk, and I just ate it up because I was a big fan of Alien. Right, Alien was an alien. And it kind of scratched that itch that I wanted to play a game that was kind of like that, and that was the only thing that was going. And it was cool enough, anyways. But like when I was first introduced to Warhammer 40,000, I was living. Gosh, I would have been 19 or 20 years old, somewhere around there. I was living in Santa Cruz, California at the time, and I was kind of like, of course, I was into comic books, and I like to draw, and I've always been like really kind of an artsy kid, and so I think I walked into a game store or was a comic book store, and they had some of the models or some of the miniatures out there, and I thought it was kind of lame. I'm like, why would you want to put fantasy stuff in the future setting and all that? And I didn't realize actually it was pretty cool.
It is,
And then so maybe like 5 years later, I come to this game called Space Hulk, and then I realize that it's actually that game that I thought was kind of weird back in the day. And so I started playing it, and it was a lot of fun. It's like, if you've ever played Space Hulk, it's kind of like playing chess with like assault cannons and missile launchers.
Nice.
With a timer, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun, and I was really getting behind it. And then I realized I had collected all these models that I was painting because I really love painting. Like when I was a kid back in the early 80s, 1981, 82. And of course, you know, I've just been watching Stranger Things, like the third episode or the third season of Stranger Things. And it's funny trying to explain certain things in that series to my daughter, because she's like just fascinated that I grew up in I grew up in the 80s. I graduated from high school in 1986. And so she'll ask me all these questions. Oh, did people really wear neon all the time?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. And then when I was growing up, I would have been in 1980. I would have been 12. So in 1982, I would have been 14. So I'm just about the right age as the kids that are in Stranger Things. So I'm trying to explain all this to my daughter and talk about Dungeons and Dragons and all that. And and like the early days. This isn't like the D&D that you know today is not what it used to be. And so I used to paint models all the time, like from the time I was like about 10 years old all the way up till I was about maybe 14. And then I kind of dropped off because I just like to draw more. And I thought for a while I wanted to be a comic book artist for a very long time because I like to write stories and I like to draw stuff. And but I also like getting laid, so I so I
the two are just you can't mix
because I like playing. Well, I like playing music, and I was learning guitar at that time, and so that kind of took over that side. Like all my hobby stuff, or my nerdy hobbies, were sort of switched over to more like cool hobbies, which were playing guitar and cruising chicks, right? So so then I never got back into it until I got back in. I was in college, and I was working at a game store, and that kind of got me back into painting and such. And then that's when I discovered Space Hulk, and so I started painting models, and I found that I was still pretty damn good at it. And so I was winning contests, and in fact, a lot of the original stuff that I have from Space Hulk was prizes that I'd won for painting contests back then. And it was a whole lot different back then than it is today, because right now, like painting miniatures and models and stuff like that is like fine art. And it's been because we have the technology is there, and we've got 3 decades of learning techniques and doing stuff. Like I know guys right now who are professional miniature painters, and they go to like conventions and stuff like that to teach painting because everybody's into these armies and stuff, and it's expensive to have your models painted for you, so people want to paint, right? And then it's just a hobby and people dig it. And so there's are you guys familiar with a convention called Adepticon?
Yes.
Adepticon that's like the Super Bowl of like miniature war games. And I'm not just saying like 40K. There's all kinds. They're like historical war games and fantasy war games and like naval simulations and stuff like that. So it's kind of it's kind of a dorky hobby, I guess, but it's fun, and a lot of it takes a lot. If you're good at chess, you would probably be really good at playing like miniature war games, because there's a lot of thinking ahead, and there's a lot when I play games, first of all, I can't play first person shooters. No. Because I have obviously I got wearing glasses and stuff. When I was a kid, I had eye surgery when I was like a little teeny kid, and so like the muscles of one eye was pulling the other one this way, and then they had to go in, do some surgery, and then the other one started pulling the other one the other way. And so as a result of that, I've got prisms in my glasses and everything, and some that kind of stuff. But it's like, gosh, I don't even know where I was going with that. So
you were talking about war games and chess.
I get motion sickness when I play first person shooters. So like, have you ever watched I'm sure you have. Did you ever watch Cloverfield?
Yes.
That movie Cloverfield. I couldn't watch it. I could not watch that whole thing because it was like, you're doing this and you're going on, and it's in that first person thing, and so you're moving around, and like if I see that, it will actually make me physically sick. So like I can't watch it.
Blair Witch kind of started that whole thing.
Yep. Or like even episodes of Cops. Remember
when they're running
around the cameraman running after the and they're going. And I can't watch those things because it will make me queasy. So I can't really play those, but like I've never really been into them anyways, because I'm more of a strategic thinker. I like to play like real time strategy stuff. And
have you ever played BattleTech?
Oh yeah, I played BattleTech. Okay. That was actually, I think I probably played BattleTech before I played Warhammer 40,000.
My friend John used to play that almost every day for a long time.
BattleTech is a lot of fun, but it's it's a lot of bookkeeping.
It takes forever, especially when you're ticking off armor points. Oh my god.
Yeah. So so I'm always been like a strategy guy, anyways. I know like guys like Andrew Tate and I think Ed Loudmore are like pretty good chess players. At least that's how they sort of represent themselves when I'm reading them on Twitter. And I keep thinking, man, I'd love to play these guys and like teach them how to play, I don't know, bolt action or something, historical, and see how they would do in those situations. Because I think strategy games appeal to a certain mindset, whereas like, you're going to play Call of Duty. It's a different You know?
Right. It's almost
or you play like World of Warcraft
Yeah.
and you're like in third person there. I played World of Warcraft for a little while, and then I realized that I wasn't creating anything with it. I mean, you're creating a character, I guess, and you're playing around in it, but like it's first of all, it absorbs your life, and then second of all, at the end, like you're done playing after 4 hours and you got nothing to show. Whereas if I'm playing like or if I'm painting a model and I just spent 4 hours on it, that's going to be a damn good looking model. So
yeah.
Well, that's what got me to stop playing Call of Duty, the original. I was playing that in college, and I would play for there was one session where I played for 4 hours, got up, and I just thought, I have not accomplished anything productive in my life.
Yeah.
Like reading, I had all these books. I had Solzhenitsyn, Dostoevsky. I had all these Russian books, novels to read, and all this other stuff. Yeah, I was like, what exactly is if I'm gonna do games or whatever, at the very least, have it be where it's strategy based or where it's teaching me strategy. So you're saying how there's a different mindset. I enjoy first person shooters, but at the same time, there's something to be said about long-term strategy, because one of the things it teaches you is patience. Don't just go charge into the battlefield and throw everything at it at the beginning. You have to think long-term. So are you thinking high? Is your time preference high or low? Is your thinking long-term or short-term? If it's long-term,
I was gonna say is but see that's why I think I'm so like wrapped up with 40K for as long as I have been, because it scratches a lot of itches, right? Like when it comes to like creativity and like modeling, I've always been like a fine scale model builder. So it scratches that itch. Then there's the game aspect of it. There's strategy. There's list building. There's then there's the background and the fluff to it, and it's just I don't know, for a guy like me, it's like hits every one of my checkpoints for something that I want to get into. And then like I can remember one of the reasons I wanted to get into like digital photography back in the day when it first came out was because I wanted to shoot miniatures. I want to take shots of my stuff, and then like I've gotten into so many peripheral things as a result of this hobby. So like I learned how to code. I learned how to do HTML back when you were building websites and it was all straight HTML.
Just straight static HTML.
Yeah, I did that so that I could show off my models. And then I learned graphic design because I always wanted to like create my own codexes or army books and stuff like that. So I learned that. In fact, I don't know if I still have them, but I could probably point you to the first like projects I did in desktop publishing, and they were all for 40K because nobody was doing it at the time. It was all new, and I was always into graphic design. I did graphic design before there even was computers. So like I was a galley artist, so I used to do layout and paste up artistry. So you'd have to I actually learned all the stuff that Photoshop and Illustrator and Quark Express and actually now it's Adobe Creative Suite, all that stuff, all the analog ways of doing that stuff before it went digital. So I kind of feel fortunate because I was part of the old guard in that I knew what all the processes were that they were trying to sort of mimic on a Macintosh. And that's of course, what am I going to do? I'm going to try to make my hobby that much better because of it. So there's a lot that goes with the hobby, because like I still have friends today that I made because of the game, because of the hobby. Like if I met them at a convention or at a game store or something like that, just playing a game, and then you collaborate on other things. I've always, like I said, I've always been an artistic guy, so I've always liked to draw and I've always liked to paint. I've done some sculpting as well. I don't show off too much of that because that's like not Rollo Tomassi. That's not my, what I'm trying to do. There's me being the thinker and then there's me being the artist. I don't think a lot of people really appreciate that, but let me see what I can do here for you. Like this was, you guys already saw this, but nobody else has. So I'm going to put it up here.
It's still going to be good.
Yeah. Where'd it go? There it is. All right. This is a Forge World model that I did probably about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. and it's a greater brass scorpion of Khorne. And so if you know anything about the pantheon in Warhammer 40,000, it's a chaos pantheon. Khorne is the god of war, and so this is like one of his demon engines or war machines. This is a pretty big model too. This is, you can use this in the game. I don't know if it will be tournament legal, but you can use it in the game. And so like you could see like different techniques that I've learned to sort of put that, the lava effect on there. And that's one thing I have done. Gosh, I've never shown these out to anybody. So.
That's great. Now, can you tell everyone how long that took you? And like,
let's see, that took me about 60 hours right there.
Damn.
And
wow.
so, and that, like, not all at once, obviously. It's just, doing it off and on.
Yeah, what a labor of love. That's really cool.
Yeah. So that's me coming home from work and picking away at it as I do it. Let's see, what else can I show you here?
That army would be cool too. You showed us.
Yeah, I'll show you the yeah, I'll show you. This is my, yeah, okay, why not? Let's show you that one. This is, I'm glad we can be relaxed on this show. So
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Rollo,
absolutely.
You've got the chat guys are all sitting on pins and needles to see this stuff too, because usually they're quite
yeah, there's nobody talking.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, I gotta see this.
Yep.
Oh yeah, this is my Bialtan Eldar army. And this is years of work right here.
Wow.
And this is just a small portion of this. This is just the vehicles of this army. This is one of, like, people always ask me, like, when they find out that I play 40K, they go, what armies do you play? And I think it would be easier for me to describe the armies that I don't play. Because I've played pretty much every army with the exception of, like, say, Necrons and just like a few other things. But like I've tried my hand at a lot of different armies. But this is my Eldar army. And let's see.
The guy in the back looks like a anorexic Boba Fett.
No, that's an Eldar Titan. It's kind of like one of those big. It's like Mecha, like a Gundam or something like that. It's
Robotech or even Aerotech. Yeah,
Robotech used to be such a great show too.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
I love that show.
Robotech. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not into anime at all except for Robotech. I kind of dig on Robotech, but and then I like but I'm old school, right? So there's that, and then Akira was.
Absolutely. 1991. Yeah,
they're redoing Akira.
Are they?
Yeah, Netflix is doing a series for Akira coming up.
So you're saying you haven't seen Cowboy Bebop?
That was my next. You have to. Okay, don't tell Aaron Clarey that. You'll never hear the end
exactly.
of it.
Not into tentacle porn. I'm sorry. I presume that's what that is.
No, it's not. No, Cowboy Bebop is completely. You would actually dig it just for the big band jazz alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's that same one you were just talking about a minute ago.
Oh, gotcha.
And let's see. I wanted to. Oh, this is a competition miniature that I did for a painting competition. Let's throw that one on there.
Just let me make you the presenter again.
There you go.
There you go.
Like
so
that. That's
right.
this is actually my first attempt at non-metallic metallic, and what that is it's attempting to simulate metallics on the model with just flat paint. So there is some metal on it, like in the exhaust there, and then like in sort of in the guts and the little fiddly bits inside there. But like the yellow and the blue is all done with just acrylic paint. And I'm okay at it. There's people who you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between metal and not metal. There's, like I said, there's a lot of people have raised this to a really kind of fine art form. It used to be just like, oh, it's hobbies and it's crafts and stuff like that. Now people will sculpt their own models so that they put them in a thing. Let's see.
Well, now with 3D printing too.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is, I have a love-hate relationship with 3D printing.
Now, do you have a 3D printer?
I did.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
No,
Did that get thrown out the window?
I still have it. I still do have it.
Oh, wow.
This is like kind of like a diorama thing.
That's beautiful. Even the set pieces you have them on the terrain.
Yeah, the pedestal or
yeah, that's great.
Excuse me, it's called a plinth.
A plinth. Yeah, okay.
Plinth. Let's see if I can throw this one.
That's pretty badass.
Let's grab this one. This is the other side of that. Right there.
Oh, wow.
That's the opposite side of that one. That's actually part of the Eldar army that I have too. But
look at
I
that.
I put it on for this is old too. I did this back in like the mid 2000s, I think.
Looks like there's an alien skull trophy head on.
Yeah, the Gene Stealer. That's from Space Hulk, actually.
Oh, okay.
So there's that. And I'm not sure what else I should show you here. This is kind of cool. Let's put that on there. Oh, wait. Actually, before I show you that one, this one's even better. Let's do this. This was another award winner that I did, and this has been in some magazines and stuff too. So let's put this on. This one, you haven't seen this one yet.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and that's all those little like scales on there are all hand painted on there.
Oh,
so
shit.
Wow. This is probably about a 60 or 80-hour project because it covers like the bottom and the top or the top and the bottom.
Yeah. Now, did the cockpit panels open?
Yes, they do.
That's
matter
cool.
of fact, did I don't know if I had a close up of that. Sorry. Let's see. These are some other I've actually done 2 of these in the past. Where'd that one go? There we go. Like these are my Eldar flyers right here for when I'm playing the game.
Oh, cool.
So you can sort of see all my junk there. Again, I have a whole different setup on my table now that I'm like looking at this going, God, that's an old setup.
Wow.
But this, you get an idea of the stuff that I've done here. I got
they're pretty just looking at the scale, looking at your little paint bottles there. They're pretty large.
Yeah, they're these ones are pretty big, but like I've painted much smaller. These are I'm just showing you the vehicles.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. All that's freehand on there. So
these colors are fantastic. They really pop.
Yeah, that's it's funny. It's like now airbrushes are specifically designed to do this kind of stuff.
Really?
Back in the day, it was just like a single action Pache, hobby airbrush that I was using and just doing simple stuff. Now you can almost draw with an airbrush now.
Really?
That's how fine you can get the
wow. No, do you use an airbrush and old school brushes as well, like the red sable brushes?
Yeah. I use primarily I use Kolinsky sable brushes for this stuff, but for something like this, the fade that you're looking at right there from the dark green to the like this is in here, all that is done with airbrush.
Oh, okay.
So, and it's much easier, there's a time like back in like the 90s where if you used an airbrush you would get disqualified.
Really?
Like, yeah, from like a competition. And they say, wow. You're cheating, you're using an airbrush. Like, dude, do you know how hard it is to do this with a single action airbrush?
Wow.
Yeah. So just some nerdy stuff for you.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, everyone loves it. Yeah. Yes.
You guys like it. They really like it.
Nerds.
We have a question too about your guitars.
Oh man.
What's your axe of choice?
Yeah, do you have
well, I have a lot of guitars. Let me actually
yeah, I'm actually really interested in knowing this one.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Actually, I think I probably have some pictures for you on these ones as well.
Make sure the ones you downloaded too.
Yeah. Okay, I'll show you. This is one of mine. I gotta save these off of my Facebook here real quick. So, I have My favorite guitar is my Ibanez Destroyer. I have that from 1984, and then I have a Kramer Beretta that is here. I'll show you that one too, since that one looks cool.
So, do you have one of the Flying V's?
No, I don't.
Oh, really?
I used to have
really?
I used to have like the shark one, like the Randy Rhoads one before, a Kramer like that. But I will show you what I'm talking. I actually have a Frankenstrat that's kind of like Eddie Van Halen's as well.
Okay, cool.
But this is my Ibanez.
Nice.
And
oh wow,
that's 1984.
Is that exposed brick contrived, or does that?
No, I don't know what the fuck I took.
Okay. Pretty funny.
That was him banging the guitar up against the side of the wall after.
Well, actually adds to it. I like the look.
I really want to know about my guitar.
Nice.
And then this is my cramp. That's my Beretta.
Oh.
And it's got a fly on the front.
Did you airbrush that?
No, I didn't actually. That was one. But this guitar right now would probably sell for about $3,000.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I sank an EMG pickup in there, an EMG 89, and if you know anything about this, and then I actually added the extra tone pot in there too, because before, like on an original Beretta, like from the 80s, there was only like one Seymour Duncan pickup in there, and then there was one volume, and that's it. No plugs, no nothing. That's all you did was just turn it up and go. And so I like the EMG sounds on my other guitars, so I decided to modify this a little bit. I think it's better, but it's no longer stock. So,
right.
People collect these things like, just to buy. Kramer did a reissue of the old 80s stuff back in the mid 2000s, and they sold really, really well, but they sold mainly to guys like me, right? Who, I didn't get my dream guitar back when I was 19 years old. Yeah. So those are two of my guitars. I have 4 Kramers. I have that one Ibanez that you were just seeing. I have a Les Paul that is it's a custom. It's got a mother of pearl inlay on my. I'll see if I can find a good shot of that. I have a mother of pearl inlay on this bad boy here.
So do you have any BC Riches by chance?
No, I don't. I like the Warlocks.
Yep, that's what mine is.
Really cool. Back in the day, the Warlocks were where it was at.
Oh yeah, Blackie Lawless and Paul Stanley. That's where I got my idea from. Was those two yahoos?
I'm only going to show this to you once, so. Come back. There we go. I'm only showing this to you because it's the only decent shot of the front of this thing. But this from about a few years back.
Oh, cool.
But you see like in the
Nice.
on the fretboard. No, it's a Jay Tercer Les Paul, and it's a custom job. I had him actually do it. Okay. And it's got the mother of pearl is like a snake on the fretboard, so it's like that abalone kind of shell stuff that's cobbled together from it. It's a really great guitar. This is if I'm recording something, this will be the guitar that I use the most.
Okay,
because it's so versatile. But let's see. I think
we also have a question.
We got the music nerds talking up now because they're wanting to know what guitar players influenced you the most.
Well, Randy Rhoads, what made me want to play guitar. Gosh, I have so many different, like, I liked, okay, let's just say this. I never even would have thought about like being in a band or even like exploring music if it had not been for Kiss.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be talking to you about any of this if it was not for Kiss. So there was but again, remember when Kiss was like big, I think I was like 9 or 10 years old.
Well, yeah, and that was back in the makeup days, and they had the dolls and all the bullshit.
Back during rock and roll, when you dressed up like a girl and sang about the devil. Now that was music.
All right, I'm gonna show you this for half a second, just so you guys can get an idea what I was doing here.
Or are we gonna see I've only shown this 20s?
I've only shown this to like so many people, so let's see if you watch this, you get like the real deal. This is me back in the day. I'm not gonna tell you when, but this is me back in the day. So that's me back in the day.
Holy shit!
Oh!
Let me make you a presenter.
Do I look like a certain personality? Oh, I'm not even gonna make that connection.
Oh my god, that's hysterical.
Yeah.
I love it.
Wow.
It's
How
great.
long my hair used to be. Actually, this is actually short for how long my hair used to be. So
Now
wasn't it down to your waist?
Is that
Yeah.
famous apartment you always talk about? You had
no,
like
no, this is a rehearsal space. This is a
Okay.
rehearsal space. Yeah. My North Hollywood, my studio. in
Yes,
North
yes,
Hollywood,
yeah.
No,
That's
no,
hysterical.
I would never show anybody.
I love the white tennis
my
shoes. Yeah, you look. It's like classic 1980s rock.
Yeah.
Love
God,
it.
I can't believe I'm showing you.
So while you're looking at
That's
stuff there, Rollo,
great.
there was another question that came up, and they were wanting to know: are you a 6, 7, or 8 stringer, and what's your opinion on +6
okay.
string guitars?
Well, I'm a six string player, although I have thought about buying a 7. 8 strings, what are you doing?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really.
you're getting out there with 8.
Why do you, this is me doing studio stuff back in the day.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
That's that Frankenstrat I was telling you about.
And the ripped jeans wasn't store bought that way. Those came that was wear and tear.
Yeah.
That's mileage.
You had to actually earn that back then. Yeah, that was.
You look like you're 12.
Well,
he's got that enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Like he hasn't had his soul sucked out or something like that. You know?
Seriously.
He hasn't hit bitterness yet.
Well, what's funny? I like coming on here because like I get so much grief from everybody. I can expect this from at least one commenter every time I do a video with Pat or on my own. Somebody will say, "Why does he dress like he's 14 years old? You know, what's wrong with him? Why can't he?" I'm like, "What do you want me to do, dude? Do you want me to do like Jordan Peterson? Do you want me to like come in suit and tie
the day you do that, dude, the day you do that, no.
One day you need to do that
it.
just for shits and giggles.
Oh, just to fuck with
Mhm.
people.
Well,
Oh
no,
my
if you're
God.
gonna do it, you do the whole like Victorian era.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Pipe and a
you gotta
get
Amazon clothes or some shit.
fucking
yeah, and you get the top hat that's like goes up to there.
A monocle.
You know?
monocle.
Yeah, you got to get the monocle too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've never been like so conscious of what I wear since I've published these books and I started doing, showing my face and all this other stuff. I've never been so conscious about it because it's like people they'll read my book and they'll go, "Oh man, he must be this really distinguished." Like they imagine me like a smoking jacket with a pipe and some big library.
Exactly, the monocle.
With a
Hello,
book in your
kid.
hand.
Yeah.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
We are here to talk about the Russian.
See,
I know.
I've been reading your stuff for years, and I didn't quite have a image of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So that's what's so funny is you could have worn a suit, but you also could have shown up like John in Modern Dating in a bathrobe. I've seen so many crazy things, especially as a writer, where you see these kind of smart guys who, in real life, they don't look anything like the people that they write about. So you kind of understand that the people that they write about in their books are not exactly who they are in real life. They're not Hemingway, they're not Jack London or whatever. Right. But so when I was seeing some of the stuff, I was like, well, I'm glad he's like got some interests that are relatable on first. Maybe not that, but like I'm not a guitar player. But
oh shit! Hang on, let me make you presenter again. Hang on. There you go.
I talk about it long enough.
Oh, that's cool.
It's James Hetfield.
Oh, dude, I can show you guys. God, I have video of me from 1993 where I played on this show called The Party Machine. I'm not so sure I want to put that up, to be honest.
What goes on there stays there.
Yeah. I don't want I have it loaded on my Facebook and I don't want to
save that for later.
But it's I have video. Okay, I don't know if you guys are familiar with back in the day, back in 1993, there was Club MTV was a big deal, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the 90s, early 90s, so people are still cool. and and so but like Club MTV was a big deal, and all it was a dance show. It was kind of like, you know, American Bandstand for the 90s, right? Where you just show hot chicks, you know, shaking their ass and all that. And there was a late night show that came on after Arsenio Hall, and it was called The Party Machine. And it was hosted by Nia Peoples. Do you remember Nia Peoples?
Yep.
Yes.
She was an actress and stuff. She was like, I think she was the sister of Mario Van Peebles.
I think you're right.
I don't know. So anyways, so I because I was doing studio work back then, like I was playing, I was a studio musician while I was still trying to be a, you know, rock star. I would get gigs like that. They would say, "Hey, we need you to come and play on the Party Machine or some, you know, whatever. We need a guy that looks like you to play." Okay, fine. I played for a couple of different. I played bass for a white rapper at one point on that show. His name was Trent Dean. People
I was about to say, was his name Marshall Mathers?
No, it wasn't Marshall Mathers.
That's a little later.
His name was Trent Dean, and you'd never seen a more 80s, like early 90s guy than this dude. And
he looked like Rick Astley or
dude
whatever.
Was fun. He was fun to hang out with. I made a lot of friends in that gig, but I also play. God, I'm gonna embarrass myself. I also played guitar for this group called the Triplets. And it was three chicks, like three Latina girls, but they were like, they play rock, kind of like pop and commercially kind of rock.
A little spice to that.
Yeah. And they are all triplets, real triplets. And they all have some talent, you know, they can all sing. One of them was a guitar player and she was a lot of fun. But I won't go any further than that. But I played on the Party Machine with them, and again made some good friends.
Rollo, just real quick, the thumbnail that's showing up for the live is this. Hang on, I don't know if you can see it. Let me stop presenting so you can. Oh wait, let me just undo that real fast.
Oh,
that's their thumbnail. It's you.
That's your thumbnail now?
Yep.
Please. I know that's what they're gonna do.
That's great.
I knew that was gonna get out at some point.
I looked over. I'm like, "What the? Oh shit, that's great."
I'm getting slow doxed as it is, anyways. I might as well just. So yeah, but I played on the Party Machine back in '93, and I forget where I was going with that, but that was a lot of fun.
You played
that's what my video is.
Okay. Nice.
And people will go instantly. They'll go to like YouTube and they'll try to look at it. It's not on YouTube. Don't worry about it. I know it's not on YouTube. It was back in the day when, well, I mean, I have video of it, but only because I recorded it at the time of the broadcast, and then I transferred it to digital.
Oh, okay.
It's before the internet remembered everything, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe it's out there somewhere, but I don't know. But that was like their answer. It came on after Arsenio Hall, so it was like on at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and the thing is that they broadcast it then, but they actually shot those shows 2 at a time, and you had to be there at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And you had to be all dressed up like you were going out to a club or something. And they had some unbelievable women on that show, but you had to be there at 5 in the morning and be ready to dance and just like pretend like you're at a dance club kind of thing. And then they would have live acts there too. And so we would shoot 2 at a time. So you would go from like 6 a.m. to 12, and then from like 1 o'clock till about like 6 p.m. So it was a long ass day when they were shooting those things. And do you know the actress Sally Kirkland? Have you ever heard of Sally Kirkland before? Yeah, older. Well, I don't know how old she is now. But I met her on that set. And she actually wanted to get with the guy who was the drummer in my band at that time. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I can't believe I'm talking about that. But that's from that picture, and that was from those days back then.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I don't know. What else did you guys want to talk about today? Besides me and my.
Well, you
sorted.
There was the other stuff that you've done has been the art for adult beverages.
Oh yes,
yes,
yes. I have been, well, see what, here's the thing is like when I got into graphic design, I started graphic design doing like newspapers, and I used to build phone books. There was a lot of money in phone books back when you actually needed phone books. But this is like this is the day when the internet was just sort of like coming into its own. There was no, I mean, there was a Google, but it was just a search engine back then. And so people actually used, phone books. I learned a lot during that time of my life because you had to deal with a lot of different personalities because everybody was buying like ads for the phone book. So I was meeting lawyers and doctors and insurance salesmen and like anybody, and then that's just those are the professionals, and then there's like the restaurants and all this other, anybody who wants to be in the phone book, be advertised in the phone book. I had to deal with a lot of different personalities, and that was one of the reasons why I got into psychology, because I wanted to learn how to sort of like predict these guys and understand, what their needs were going to be just based on like who they were, so that I wasn't wasting my time, because I found that I was wasting a lot of my time just talking to these assholes. So, so that's where my design career came from. I've always been like I said, I've always been an artist. So I've always been drawing. I've always been doing graphic design, and then I got into web design once the web sort of became something. I got into digital music. Obviously, I got into digital art. My primary focus for my art degree was digital illustration, and that was like back in the day. I went to college a lot later than I think a lot of people realize. I didn't start I didn't finish my 4-year degree until I was like 32. So, but that was a good thing because I'd already had a lot of job experience from working in what it was I was going back to school to finally finish. So, and that's when I decided to get into behavioral psychology and everything else, because I was writing for I was participating, and I was a moderator for SOSWAV back then. And I was applying a lot of stuff that I learned from my psychology understanding to what I was writing about and on SOSWAV back then. But originally it was so I could understand my clients. And then I was working in I worked in casino industry for a long time for gaming. I did promotions. That's what got me into doing promotional stuff. Because that's all I found myself doing. And back then, because I knew all this stuff that I knew, I wore a lot of hats. I was the IT professional. Like nobody knew how to network Macintoshes, so I was the one who was doing all that stuff. So I was the IT department for these casinos. I was the art department for these casinos. I was like the marketing and branding guy for all these casinos. The only thing I didn't do was public relations, and I worked pretty closely with PR people there too. So that's really where I came from, was working in gaming and that kind of stuff at primarily casinos. And then one day I decided that I wanted to like broaden I didn't want to just have a portfolio full of casino crap. So I took a job at an import exporter. I'm not going to give you guys the name of it, but I had another portfolio of liquor brands that I was in charge of. And at one point I had about 16 different brands that I was the principal creative guy for all of these brands. And that's when I moved to Orlando because they relocated the headquarters to Orlando. And then, so a lot of my liquor career was in Orlando, and I found out that I was really good at it and people really liked it. And so I worked out getting ownership percentages of a couple of those brands, which was a really wise move on my part. I'm not saying that I made $1 million, but it's nice to have it. It's nice to get residuals from all that stuff. So so I got into branding and marketing pretty heavily because of that. I learned the legal side of copyright, trademark, sort of brand legal stuff like compliant, like TTB compliance and that kind of stuff. And the crazy thing about liquor is that every state has different laws for alcohol. So like Utah, as you might guess, is one of the tightest states in the United States when it comes to alcohol. And there's so many restrictions, and you have to know all this stuff because if I'm going to put out a bottle, or if I'm going to do something, I'm going to change some sort of marketing plan for a brand, then I have to know what I can get away with on that bottle for 50 states. So there's some there's brand out. I probably could write a book on how to go about creating brand, like a liquor brand, and making sure that you're going to be compliant in all 50 states, and then overseas too, because
Dude,
in Europe,
some serious money for that book. Seriously, that's
I just like things to think about if that's what you want to get into. But so that would affect the way that I would design a bottle, or the way that I would design a marketing campaign, so that I knew that I was going to be compliant in certain states, and in the other states, like for Utah or whatever, I would. Was it Utah? That's funny. It's like Utah and Hawaii, for whatever reason, is like are some of the toughest alcohol laws in the union.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
But so I would have to know that and incorporate that into my design process. So, and then there's, understanding how this, like on some of the bottles I was working on, it was a silk screen process where you're like screening ink onto the bottles. And then guess what? Certain states and certain countries only allow certain ways to print things on a bottle. So for instance, like if you want to get a really bright red ink, well, that red ink has cadmium in it, and that cadmium has lead in it. And it's like the most minor, like minuscule amount of lead that would be in the cadmium. One of the things, anyways, is toxic, right? So the reason that you couldn't use that particular kind of ink on that bottle was not because it was a risk to the person, like poisoning the person. That was never going to happen. It's that it would go into a landfill, and then that would be poisonous to go into the landfill. And so you have all these like environmental and like laws and recycling laws. And so I had to learn a lot of the legalities just so I didn't get myself into, because you would go and you would like spend like 3 months preparing a new product, and you would have to shit can the whole thing because you forgot that there's red cadmium in the red. And so go back and go do it again. And maybe that was an easy fix, but there were some things like for instance, like if there's recycling things, or there's on the back of a bottle, if you read the government warning on there, there's usually one like set government warning for the United States, but that's not the same one you're going to see when you're over in Amsterdam, because they want people to know, they want pregnant women to know that you shouldn't be drinking alcohol. So you have to put that on the bottle. It's like cigarettes, right? Cigarettes will fucking kill you. Okay, yeah, here it is on the side of the pack of the cigarettes. Well, the same thing goes for bottles and stuff. So you have to know all that stuff. I don't think people really realize just the amount of mental effort that goes into producing like a bottle, like Ciroc or a whiskey or something like that. It's easy to say, oh, I'm just going to go slap a label on it, but you can't just slap a label on it. And I'm learning right now, because I'm actually working with a brewery right now to do beer labels for some new microbrew stuff that's coming out of actually Philadelphia. So I have to know. Yeah, I have to know. I'll let you guys know once it's ready for prime time. But it's a microbrew kind of thing that I'm working on with these guys. And then I, every once in a while somebody will hit me up and say, hey, I want you to do a label, or I want you to do something for my bottle. Right now, in my real life and in my real job, I only stick with the brands that I have as well, my 2 portfolio brands. But then like whoever is, like, if I've done it in the past, people will call me up and say, we want you to go do this, or we want you to do something else. So if I've worked with, like, for instance, I'll just throw this one out there. Ronabuelo Rums. It's a top shelf Panamanian rum. And the guys who own it are when I knew him, he was the senator. He was a senator in Panama. He's now the president as one of the Varela brothers in Panama. And they own a very, very, gosh, I should show you some pictures of that. They own a very amazingly cool distillery in Panama, but it's it's in this city called Pese, P-E-S-E, and in Panama. And the thing about Panama is, like, there's no middle class in Panama. You're like either super rich or you're like dirt poor. but like the Varela brothers take care of everybody in that city, and it's smack dab in the middle of sugarcane fields. So they will actually go and harvest a sugar cane, and that's what the rum is distilled from, is sugar cane. So they will go out there, and these are dudes, like there are guys out there who are like probably like 65, maybe 70 years old, and they are like wire thin, and they are like muscular as hell because all they do is swing a machete at at stalks of like sugar cane. That's all they do all day. And they look old and everything, but they would kick your ass if you got in a fight with them because they're just like, just made of like steel. But they're really cool people. So that was one of my brands. I still, if they call me up and they ask me for something, I might do something with them occasionally. Cool. But yeah, that was a really good gig. They used to do, you ever heard of Panama Jack rum?
Oh yeah,
Panama Jack came out of that same distillery as well.
Oh, okay.
I could tell you some crazy ass stories from the liquor industry. Like, I remember when Sammy Hagar came out with the Cabo Wabo tequila, and that was a big deal back then because like he's one of like back in the late 90s and into the early 2000s, there was a trend for like celebrities and rock stars and rappers and stuff to get behind a liquor label. So I think it was like 50 Cent had like Ciroc. I think that might have been the one he got behind. And if you could get a rapper to put your brand name in one of their songs, that song was like super popular, you could write your own ticket, man. That was fantastic. But I remember when Sammy Hagar got into doing his own tequila, which was his proprietary brand of tequila for Cabo Wabo Cantina. And then I think it was 2008 or 2009, he sold that brand for $85 million.
Wow.
Overnight, he was like, he was already a millionaire.
Mega millionaire, basically.
And the reason I know, because I don't know him personally, but I know Sammy lives at the lake, or he has his son Aaron lives at the lake.
Speaking of Aaron, real fast,
Clary's coming on for a second.
We're gonna get him.
Oh no!
Yeah, he wants to yell at you. He wants to yell at you for not watching Cowboy Bebop.
Oh my God. I don't do anime,
ready to rumble.
This is going to be fairly epic. I'm thinking.
Don't do anime. Oh, okay, make him stay on topic.
I know. All right.
Trying to get Aaron to stay on topic. That's up there with feeding the 5,000, walking on water, converting water into wine, and rising from the dead in 2 days.
Aaron, I sent you the link.
Let's see what happens.
Aaron is now my first like affiliate link for the Rational Male 101.
Cool.
Yeah. Only because he's cool. I've known Aaron I knew Aaron before I think I knew him back when I was at So Suave.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I know when I first met him. And
here he comes.
Look at
he is.
Look at this morose motherfucker right here.
I'm not here. I was just here to pick on TJ.
Yeah, good luck.
You got an added bonus with me.
But you know what? Now that I hear someone that I used to look up to and respect, one of the major R's. There's Roosh and Royce and Rollo, and then you're like, who's Cowboy Bebop? Why are there cowboys and why are they bebopping? And other questions.
It's worth it just for the music.
Yeah, that alone is true. Rollo, do you want me to lend you the DVDs?
No, I'm good. I really don't have time to watch anime. Here's the thing: is like I dig it. I like it as an art form. It's just I can't get behind the stories, and I just can't get behind the. There's other things it's funny. Is like one thing that really rubs me the wrong way is when people take one like geek and then they like try to modify it to fit their own geek. And here's an example. This is the one that it really irks me. Is like I've been a part of like the Warhammer 40,000 community. Like I've been into this stuff, like I said, since 1989, 1990, somewhere around there. So when I go on and I look for memes or something for like 40K, or I see somebody and well intentioned. They go and they draw like a Space Marine as if it's like Cowboy Bebop, right? Or they try to make it like chibi, like chibi thing.
Oh, I hate that. I hate that.
Or they it's like, don't cross the streams, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, they did that chibi style with Call of Cthulhu, and it annoys the hell out of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like when I see people kind of mix their, and not again, they mean well, because oh man, wouldn't it be great if we had Sisters of Battle and they all look like anime? No, it wouldn't be cool, because it's grim dark. It's supposed to be like nihilistic and depressing, not like, hey, big eyes.
You're ruining ours.
I will. I'll defend Rollo because he's right, because pretty much all anime does suck. No, he's absolutely right. I mean, there's handfuls of one. Like I on one hand, I could count the ones that are worth watching.
Well, we were talking about Robotech.
Yeah, Robotech I like, but then I watched that back when I was probably 16 years old.
Don't ruin it. Watching it as an adult, you will be
very depressed. Cappy was 35 and you were 16.
Well, like maybe to bring this back to on topic here, I found that a lot of anime is very, very blue pill. It's very like definitely. It's like and Robotech's a really good example of this. Is like it's like the do everything for the girl,
Well, man, like how much of everything, like once you take the red pill and you start looking at almost everything, and it's almost, you got to decide, can I tolerate it or is it just intolerable? Some of the stuff that I used to listen to, I listen to it now, whether it's music or I'm watching a movie. I'm like,
yeah, you ruined fucking metal for me, Rollo.
I did. I know. You know what? I've always wanted to do a show like on like how the red pill ruined your life for you. Yeah. This is probably the perfect venue for that, because like I can talk about my music. I can talk about like my genre of music. I can talk about like my genre of entertainment and things like that. Like when I'm working with a guy on a gaming podcast right now. I'm sort of helping him out along with it, but they want to do something that's a little bit more along the lines of like being a little bit more politically incorrect. So what I see going on in a lot of like games that I really like 40K, for example, I look at Games Workshop and I see them really leaning over towards this social justice narrative. So we have to have, like, we got Age of Sigmar that comes out. Well, on the cover of Age of Sigmar, we've got what was basically a bull dyke on the cover with the Skrillex haircut and everything. And it's like, all that is just appeasing that. That's all. It's appeasement. And so like for me, seeing that, it sort of ruins that.
It has to be squashed.
And it's the same thing like when you're listening to old songs, like God forbid you ever listen to an REO Speedwagon song.
Oh God, or even Whitesnake.
Journey.
Yeah, Journey is another great one. Yep. And because like there's those songs are like really great. I mean, they stick in your head, and they're
See, that's what's so dangerous, is that they're rhetorically, they're in like art form, they're very good, but the message that they convey in the song is not good. And it's the same thing with a lot of art, is that's what's so dangerous about art, is that good art that conveys bad values is subversive.
And remember, like when I was listening to Journey, I was like 14 years old, and I liked Journey. I liked Journey before Escape.
Oh wow!
I was all into like Captured, like the live album Captured, and then Departure, and some of these other ones that they had. I really liked when Greg Raleigh was in the band, and so. But I can remember like listening to that and just like singing these songs, and like and I mean, I love Metallica, I love Iron Maiden as well. But like when I think about those songs, like the really poppy ones, the ones that were like on top 40 Billboard, this is rock songs that are on the top 40 Billboard, and you listen to them. It's one thing to listen to like a disco song or like some old kind of sappy like ballad kind of thing, and you go, yeah, of course it's blue pill. But then you listen to the songs that you still sing today, like don't stop believing has been in everything from Glee to whatever, right? And so you listen to
Sopranos.
These, exactly. So you listen to
it's in every wedding that I've been to. And when I was in college, every Friday night when we were at the bar, some guy would go over to because this was back in the day.
There was always some girl.
When there was a karaoke. No, there was a karaoke. Yeah, and she'd be, drinking the high class kokanee instead of Bush Light like the rest of us. Because but yeah, they're playing those songs, and then you suddenly realize, and that's maybe something to like jokingly, all seriousness aside, at some point to talk about is, at what point do you toss out that stuff? It's kind of the same thing with a lot of the old, not to go off topic too much, but some of the old stories and legends where there's a little bit of blue pill, but there's still some good stuff there. Like, at what point do you throw out the baby with the bathwater because it's just you burn down the building because there's too many termites? At what, or as opposed to saying, you know what, let's salvage what we can, because if we burn everything down, that's too much for most people, and they're just not going to accept it.
Well, like, here's the thing that got me is, like, once I started being a little bit more red pill and I listened to those old songs, then I realized my 14-year-old brain was listening to this stuff, and that's what I was getting, that all that, romantic idealism and everything. Like, how could you not be blue pill? How could you? And that's just like popular music.
Well, Disney stuff.
Disney's another, Disney's crazy about that. But
I agree. Yeah,
it's like seeing the code in the Matrix, like being on this side of it, and knowing that there was no way back then you could ever wake up from that. Even into the 90s, I always pegged the 90s as like the apex years for feminism. Like, if you watch episode of Friends, and my daughter's been really getting into Friends lately because she's, this is such a great show. And I'm like, and I thought, well, it's funny, it's Friends, it's classic 90s stuff. And I was looking at it, I was watching it with her. I go, God damn, this is like as blue pill as it comes. But
you're just grabbing it and tossing it out of your house, like,
nobody knew. Nobody could say anything because there was no manosphere, there was no red pill, there was nothing like that, and there was no internet. Well, for a while there was no internet. And you couldn't say, this seems kind of like, and even if you did, like, say, for instance, you go, this seems really kind of pussy. This seems like really kind of
Ross was a pussy. That's all he.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Cappy, you are not in touch with your feminine inside. And if you ever want to get a girl, and you ever want to be married and have kids, and if you don't want to die a miserable old lonely man, you better just man up and marry that girl.
You're lucky I'm picking on Rollo today, not you. That's
oh yeah, sorry, PJ, where are you? Oh, I just climbed an 8,000-foot mountain. You're welcome.
Yeah,
I ran 8 miles.
I ran 8 miles.
Oh my God.
So what?
Say, guys, I got to get going. I just want to say hi to everybody, and
hey, Gabby.
And I had Roller. Are you wearing a mullet? What do you got?
Lay
my hair out again.
Wait, did you grow your hair? What?
Yeah, it's not attached to the hat.
He's formal. But it's all party in the back.
No, I thought you had a short haircut, Rollo.
I did for a while. I've been growing it since after the convention in Orlando. I've been letting it grow since the middle of October.
Because that hat does look like something you'd pick up at Fleet Farm, and it would have the extensions in the back.
Well, welcome to my world, man. You win in Rome, right?
Okay.
No, I live in a kind of a rural part of Nevada. I mean, prime ranch, expensive ranch land, but that's
And you do,
why, man? Come on,
and you do ignite snowmobiles on fire. So I'm just saying,
dude. I heard that about.
He lives in an area. He lives in the part. He lives in a rural area where you get arrested for not having a gun.
Yeah, right? Yeah. You have to be prepared. Yeah, exactly. Could you show me? Yeah, no, it's funny. Right here, I'm in this studio right here, and it's like kind of in a, I don't want to call it a strip mall, but it's like a commercial area. Right across the parking lot from where I'm at right now, directly across is a firearms training. You can go get your concealed carry there. I'm actually going to go check it out too. But that's
all right, well, I just want to say hi, and I was going to pick on TJ, but they'll have to wait. So, but you guys have fun.
All right. Thanks.
Catch you later, Aaron.
Later.
So, Rollo, you know how there's the common joke on Twitter about, dude, do you even lift? Apparently, there's one here does Rollo even hunt?
Yeah.
Do I hunt? No, I don't hunt. I don't know, man. I fish a lot. I do a lot of fishing. Does that count? I don't know if that counts as hunting.
Counts to me.
It counts. It counts.
I fish. I will fish
Tip
anywhere.
counts.
That's another one of my things is I love to fish. Anybody who knows me that has, gosh, when I'm in Florida, that's all I want to do when I'm there.
So speaking, not to interrupt, but speaking of Red Pill songs, I'm Gonna Miss Her by Brad Paisley, where he's forced to choose between his wife and fishing, and he chooses fishing. That's gotta be the most Red Pill song I know of.
Right. Well, there are some.
I'm gonna miss her when I get home. She leaves, whatever. I got so much crap over the years where people were like, TJ, if you don't change your attitude, you're gonna be like that guy in this song. I'm like, you mean the guy who made millions of dollars off that song? Like, I don't mind being that guy, but it was just funny because so many country songs now are blue pilled. And this is the one where he's like, his wife says, you can either be married to me or go fishing. He's like, well, that's easy. I'm gonna miss you.
That's from a bumper sticker, man. I'm gonna miss you. Yeah. I it's fine. I like to fish. I don't think I could hunt though. I shouldn't say that. I have actually been bow hunting for was it wild boar on Catalina a long time ago, on Catalina Island, and if anybody knows California, Catalina, they have permits for you to go bow hunting over there at certain seasons. I went over there one time when I was younger. That was it. But I don't hunt like deer or anything like that. I have a lot of wildlife on my Rollo Tomassi compound. I have a wildlife preserve right now. If you look at my Instagram, you'll know what I'm talking about. I have
the deer.
I have deer. I have bears.
Bear too, right?
I caught that right at the right time. That bear was like really bold because that was like early afternoon that he decided to show up. But the stupid people across the cul-de-sac from me, I guess it's an Airbnb or something, because I'm about 20 minutes away from Lake Tahoe where I live. So a lot of the nicer places that are up along the edge of the foothills here are all like Airbnbs or they're vacation rentals. So some smart person decided to put the trash can out, and that's why the bear came around. Pulling all that stuff, and it was
we have the same problem in my area. I live in a rural area where there's a ton of bears, and it was funny is a couple years ago I was hiking the same place I was just now, and I turned the corner, and I hear this weird scampering noise, and I look up at the tree right in front of me, and I see these little brown figures about this tall. And by the time I realized that they're brown bear cubs, I looked down at the bottom of the tree and there's mama bear.
Oh shit.
This is what's crazy. That mama bear looked scared out of its mind. Like it was terrified of me and what I was going to do. And I realized later on it's not very big. It was probably no taller than 5 foot.
Did you have Reese with you?
No, this was pre-Reese. This was before I lived in the mountains. But the mama bear was basically saying, "I'm not going to bother you if you don't bother me." And so I took the alternative route. But I've only seen so many mama bears, but that one looked terrified.
Oh, wow.
It was interesting because most mama bears are like, "I'll rip your throat out and eat your spleen, and then brag about it on Twitter if you touch my cubs," right? And she had 2 of them. But the problem is she was not a big mama bear. Like if she had attacked me, I wouldn't have been that scared to take her on. And I wasn't carrying certain weapons with me at the time, but that's changed.
We have deer, and like if you've seen any of the pictures on my Instagram or like from this year or last year, like if you look on my website and you see that big bull deer that's on my header, that was actually I sort of stylized that from a shot that I took on my property.
Okay.
And every year we get sort of a new crop of deer that come through. Right now I've got 2 bucks that are they're both young bucks, but one of them's got a rack that's at least as big as the one from last year. And then the younger one, his friend, not quite the same rack, but he's pretty impressive too. And so they come in, they're looking for water, basically is what they're looking for. And and food. and I have fruit trees on my property as well. So they come in and they eat the leaves and they eat the fruit and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes annoying, but they're beautiful animals. I don't know what else to do with them besides like take pictures of them and post them, because I just think but the thing that's dangerous is that we have mountain lions that come down out of the hills.
Oh yeah.
We got the same thing over here. We got mountain lions and we've got the deer that are just everywhere. So whenever we turn the corner, I go to the weight room that's kind of in a rural area, and I gotta always watch out because there will be deer just sitting in people's neighborhoods. And some of the time they'll just decide in a herd. One time I was hiking and there was probably, I think, 12 of them. That was just, and they were all young deer, and there was no whatever. The scare, which doesn't scare me. It's always scary when you see the buck, because he's always worried about, not getting laid. So
yeah, well, I just like a couple mornings ago, the big buck that I'm naming him Chad. Chad was
Chad.
the alpha.
Love it.
He had, what's interesting is
big antler Chad.
The females flirt with him. They come up to him and want him to get after it. And like, there's one female that chases the other females away. And then I would assume he's probably getting after it with her and all the other ones as well. But like, it's interesting to see the competition between the females as well. I mean, you're going to see, there's a reason why they have antlers, right? I mean, so that they can fight for breeding rights. But it's interesting to see the competition on the female side of that too. And I'm not trying to make any allusions to anything else. I'm just saying we think of like intersexual competition between men or between like males, but there's a female intersexual or intrasexual competition as well.
Well, I would say it's actually, even if people think it's bad between humans, think about how bad it is between animals,
right?
Where they're we'll fight, and it's considered morally, socially not okay to kill someone over that. But within the animal kingdom, the doe's not going to complain. She's not going to go call the buck authorities, right? She's going to be like, this buck killed this buck. I'm going to have his genes over this guy's any day.
There's a great book that I'm reading right now called Promiscuity. It's by Tim Burkhead, and really, really digs into that kind of stuff. And it's all about the animal kingdom, although he includes human beings in that as well. Really good. Oh, God damn it. Somebody just put something about Steel Panther in the, I love Steel Panther. I bought, Satchel has two guitar pedals, like signature pedals that he had. He had this one pedal called the Pussy Melter, and it was a distortion pedal.
You got that shit, don't you?
No, I didn't. I really wish I had, because the big sister decided that shouldn't be, and so they banned it, or they stopped selling it on like all these like Reverb or whatever, and so it was discontinued. Then he put out Poontang Boomerang, which is
have that, don't you?
That one I do have.
Yeah,
it was $200, which is kind of spendy for a pedal for me, but I'm like, this will be worth some bucks. And it's like a limited edition. Like, I think they only made 1,000 of these things. And yeah, they'll probably ban that as well. That's why I got it. And it's actually a fairly decent, like, I think it's an analog delay pedal. It's okay. I mean, it's all right. I'll put it in my rig. But yeah, I love Steel Panther. I wish they would be a little more serious. I wish they would write some real serious songs, like, instead of just like, F this, F that. And it's everything is just about like pussy. That's all. Every last song is about pussy. And okay, and it's funny, but they're so much more talented in that, and they could actually be I mean, they're a huge band just based on the lyrics that they do now. And
hey, Rollo, do you remember a band called the Mentors?
No.
You might want to check them out. They were back in the early 80s, early to mid 80s. Three guys, the drummer, lead singer, his stage name was El Duce. The guitarist was Sicky Wife Beater.
Was it a punk band?
No, they were more of a kind of a hard rock, heavy metal. The bass guitarist, his stage name was Dr. Heathen Scum. And these guys wore black executioner hoods when they'd go on stage to kind of hide their identity. And they put out a few different albums. One of them's called Give 'Em the Axe. Another one's called Up the Dose. And they were called by magazines back in the day, they were called Stormtroopers of Rape Rock, is what they were. Because they had a song called The 4F Club, Finder, Feeler, Fucker, Forgetter, is what that was about. And if you kind of can appreciate Steel Panther. Now, Steel Panther is a lot more tight and a lot more put together than Mentors ever was. These guys were just like raging alcoholics. In fact, the drummer lead singer, he died because he got hit by a train after a gig one night. He was so drunk wandering around and a train nailed him.
Oh my God.
But if you want to hear some stuff that's very red pill in a lot of ways, but goes way back, this made 2 Live Crew, and a lot of the stuff that was in the parental explicit lyrics, it puts those guys to shame. So you might want to look them up. But the Mentors,
all right, I'll check
it out. Good stuff.
Steel Panther is great, man. I was watching some video of them at they were at Wacken, the music festival in Germany. And the crowd is crazy about them. They love them, but the lyrics are just kind of like, they're joke lyrics. But then when they do covers, they're really good at doing the covers that they do. And if they would write, they don't even have to make them like all that intelligent lyrics. It's just like, just don't say fuck every third word, but it's not profanity even. It's just like after like the first like 6 or 8 songs.
It's not edgy.
Okay,
yeah,
they have a song called Tiger Woods, just like Tiger Woods. That's a badass song. It's a great song. And the lyrics are okay, but it's like you can write that, just make the lyric. I mean, so you can still make them red pill lyrics. You can still keep it serious. You can even make it like fun. They have a song called It Won't Suck Itself. great song. But that's like, it's time to move on.
We're at a point where that kind of stuff is not edgy anymore. Now being red pill, you can say stuff that's rated G as far as the movie, whatever censors, wise overlords, ethos are concerned. But if you say that a man should be his own mental point of origin in a G movie, that can get it shut down, right? Like that's the new edgy, like or having a girl turn down all this other stuff to be a mom at age 19 or whatever it is, or for songs. That's the new. We're almost going into a weird reactionary period where not doing that stuff, but more focusing on the concepts and principles of, I'm a man and I don't answer to a woman. I don't serve women, and if anything, as you've said, they're a compliment to my life. They're not the focus of it. That's like provocative, but also considered profanity, frankly, in our society.
Well, I was my daughter was talking to me about. She's like, "Did you hear that? Like Ariel is going to be black in Disney thing?" I go, "Yeah, figures. That's just where we're at, right?" And for me, I don't care whether she's black or whatever, but it's like, to me, it's like, it's contrived. It's like, okay, fine, whatever, but write something new. If that's
exactly, thank you.
It's like, what are we going to do? Are we going to go back in time and rewrite all of Mark Twain's stuff because it was racist? Are we going to rewrite
H.P. Lovecraft? It's the same thing.
Like, are we gonna rewrite Huck Finn, or are we gonna rewrite To Kill a Mockingbird?
I mean, we don't have to go down this route, but this is why whenever you see the canary in the coal mine, you gotta pay attention to it. But what we keep doing is this stupid nonsense. We're like, oh, that's just these radical whatever people that nobody likes, and they're social misfits and ostracized. Okay, the principle has been set, right? And once you allow it to go against those guys, it's going to be eventually against you. And we're now seeing that. And so years ago, I was one of those guys who was saying, look, I don't like this guy over here. This is why there's so many free speech advocates who are like, I don't like what this guy's saying, but it's important that he be allowed to say it, not for his sake, even I'm still being a selfish bastard here, but it's for me, because if you're going to censor him, what's to say you're not going to come censor us as well?
Yeah.
And
well, like, what do you call it? Like Game of Thrones, like when Martin was writing that stuff, he was writing it because that's what he wanted to write, man. That was his groove, and that's what he was all about. And so later on, as the show progresses, the fans come in and they take over, like and even if he resists that, they'll just write fan fiction to make it, like, oh, here's how it should have ended. They'll take over it because they're locked into the social justice message. So like I was talking to my daughter about this, and I said, well, if you really, and I think we talked about this on the last time I was on here, is like, you really want to make $1 million, write red pill fiction, write something that goes against that narrative, and do it unapologetically. Like we're talking about like Steel Panther here. Okay. It's a joke. Yeah. But it grates against that Me Too narrative. Because they're these 80s guys, and they're just like so full of themselves. And what's funny is the reason that is even that. Look at Steel Panther. They're outrageously popular. Why? Because they're pushing back against that narrative. Same thing happened with Roseanne. Remember when they brought back Roseanne on ABC?
Oh God, the shitstorm.
It instantly became the #1 show on ABC because it was pushing back against that narrative.
Right.
So you have that, and of course ABC was just waiting for any opportunity to ditch that show, and it was their #1 show, but yet they canceled the show because
so which to me is, people were like, oh, the market will always tell. No, it won't, dude. These guys have money to lose, and they're ideologues, and they're stupid. But you were also talking about the whole ban thing. That's kind of, and I mentioned this before, this is what got me into writing fiction originally. At the time, it didn't even occur to me, but I was reading stuff like Where Eagles Dare and Guns and Navarro, and I was reading it, and I was interested in men and masculinity and that kind of stuff. But what was funny is I was working on a lot of my own fiction.
Go and watch that again. I have Where Eagles Dare.
Well, what's funny is I was working on a couple of my novels, and then I was reading your stuff, and I stopped writing what I was writing. I'm like, wait a minute, I need to go figure out what's going on here about this stuff before I write that stuff. I read your, like, the Rational Male, all the blog posts and essays, and then I went back and actually rewrote some of my novels that are now published. And one of them I ended up writing was explicitly, I don't call it a red pill novel, but it's, anybody who reads it will know it's a red pill book. But it's about a man who is fundamentally at the end forced to choose between his idealism, blue pill, and red pill, and because the girl is trying to fool him into thinking that there's this blue pill idealism that if he chooses, he can go down that path. But I think that you're right. But the thing is, what? To me, it's not even if it's $1 million. It's that we're selling men something that's true, and they're not going to go hate us later on or at least me, or maybe not. If they are, that's their problem. But we're not telling them stuff that's not true. They're not going to walk away. If anything, they're bitter because it's not conforming to this idealistic world that they've created in their heads. And I can say sympathetically and empathetically, I've been there, I've done it, I've seen it, and you're always going to know the truth, and it'll eat at you. It'll consume your soul. You will become a miserable human being. And this is why I've said that the purple pill guys who go halfway are almost more dangerous than someone who's blue pill, because they know enough about the truth to use it as a weapon. They know what's there.
Track with me here, okay? Because I talked to my daughter about this too. This was part of that same conversation that I had. So we were watching this. I think this was like 4th of July, the Stranger Things season 3 had come out, and we watched the first one. And we'd had this conversation, and we watched the first one, and I'm not going to ruin it for anybody because I'm only on episode 5 right now of season 3. But obviously, I think it was recently, it was in the news that like Stranger Things has like broken records for like the new like viewership or something like that for like a new series on Netflix or something like that. Crazy numbers on it. It's like wildly popular. I after I watched it, and I go, you know why this show is popular is because it reaches back and it steals from so many great shows from the 80s or movies from the 80s. Like if you know, Terminator, Alien,
kind of like Ready Player One.
Yep.
Same thing.
So it's like, okay, so it has that nostalgia appeal, but they don't say, oh, this is the new, hang on one second. They don't say this is the new you know, Terminator, or this is the new whatever. They borrow elements from it, so it like harkens back to it, and they do that very, very successfully because those were just such fantastic shows, and they had artistic integrity to them. Okay, now you say, well, Back to the Future, you know, the Goonies, what kind of artistic, you know, it's a goof movie, right? Well, yeah, but they're classics and people love it, but it's the stories that are attached. Right. And there's no pretense to those stories. People didn't care about, you know, writing they were more invested in writing something that was creative and telling a story than they were about, oh, how are people going to read this? How are people going to interpret this?
Right.
How are the fans going to do X, Y, and Z? There's all of these pre-considerations that we put into that creative process. And that's what I was getting at with George R.R. Martin, is that, or you can even say Star Wars, for example, like the fans come in and now it's no longer a creative process, like an original, you know, staying true to wanting to tell a story about something. It's, I can't tell the story because people will think I'm a racist. People will think I'm a sexist. People will think whatever. And so what happens is we have generations of guys who are writers who think that way, and that is now part of their creative what passes for their creative process. So and Vox Day was talking about this as well, because he was, you know, he's a writer as well, and he writes fiction and all that, and he's got into, there's a whole thing that he got into about the Hugo Awards about like 3 or 4 5 years ago, and yeah, the sad puppies thing. And during that whole thing, you know, I couldn't really opine about that because it was out of my wheelhouse, but like I was thinking about this and I go, there is a generation of creative individuals for whom the creative process has been compromised, because part of that process is now them like second guessing themselves because the fandom is going to rewrite their shit for them before and they're rewriting it in the original write-up because they're thinking in those terms, like, oh, I can't have a male lead. It doesn't even matter if it's white or not. I can't have a male lead. I have to have a strong, independent.
Well, that's why self-publishing has kind of become, for me, just, you know, I've gone through a publisher. I won't go through all the details, but if a publisher were to come and say, we want to publish one of your books, I'd be like, you're going to have to sell me big time on this, because when I publish my own book, it's my own narrative and it's my vision, and you will publish that would be part of the contract. You will publish the book exactly as I wrote it. I don't want to hear any crap about. Yeah, and I would say they can all go to hell. Handbasket. Self-published. Yeah, it's self-published. I will not. You know what? Yeah. I'm kind of past the age. Like when you're younger and you're young and desperate and whatever, you're willing to concede and make compromises. I'm kind of at the point where I'm just balls to the wall. Don't care. Burn it all. Crusader, cleansing fire. I'm gonna just write whatever I want, and if people don't like it, that, you know, they can all go to hell. Well, they don't like my. You know, I'm not writing explicitly red pill novels. I don't claim that in the teasers for them, but that's the values that I convey in my writing that I do now.
I'm looking at the chat right now, and was there one dude here says Lucas killed Star Wars? No, Lucas did not kill Star Wars. No, Kathleen Kennedy killed Star Wars.
Yeah. So that's important to say that. I would say that George Lucas, here's the problem with George Lucas. He understood early on, and he had people who helped him craft a narrative that worked.
Mhm.
But once he got the technology to where he couldn't rely on story anymore, because he was at that sweet spot in the 70s where he could do some special effects, but he couldn't do it all on special effects. So he had to rely on story. But once in the 90s you had CG, he's like, oh, well, we're going to redo all the original movies, and we're going to, like, I remember watching him like, there's nothing you've added to these films other than these stupid cutscenes that we didn't need. And then he went and applied that same philosophy to the prequels, where he didn't write a good story. I guarantee you, every Star Wars geek, nerd, dweeb, dork, even a gamma, could have written a better story than George Lucas on some of the stuff. Now, and I'm not blaming George Lucas necessarily for saying he's lower status than a gamma on this stuff. I just think he just had no incentive that he didn't have before. He was interested in making money. And you really saw that in Return of the Jedi, because Return of the Jedi was going to have Wookiees. But he changed it to Ewoks because he was informed, and he decided that he was going to make more money from merchandising by having cute little furry creatures for the kids to play with than Wookiees.
Right.
That would be more scary. So he was making merchandising decisions as early on as Return of the Jedi.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing that gets me a lot is, we were just talking about how the artistic process gets compromised by, well, of course, by money. That's the easy thing. It also gets compromised by like expectations of, how you should present something, or how you're going to, how you're going to be interpreted by your audience. And so they become part of the creative process, or your commercial interests become part of that creative process. And I really want to talk about this on like this gaming podcast I'm helping out with. But that's one of my biggest gripes about Games Workshop is first of all, they steal everything. Like I can't wait till Dune comes out, because you will see just how ruthlessly Games Workshop has like lifted everything they do out of Dune. But what happens is, and this has always been my gripe, is that they will make decisions on the fluff or whatever, like the background and the story side of that game will be altered to accommodate how many more models they can sell of a certain thing. So like they just reintroduced Space Marines, and they're a little bit bigger, and they honestly, that when you set them next to old Marines, they don't even look like they're part of the same game system anymore, but they're bigger so that they're easier. Honestly, I think because they're easier to paint, and so little kids have a easier time to paint a Space Marine, and gets them into the hobby. Okay, fine, they got to watch out for that kind of stuff. But so what do? Well, they go back and they retcon the the background so that they fit in, so that suddenly they're fitting in. And to me, like, because I've been in this hobby for 25 years, right? To see them do that, it's like so blatant and so over the top to say like, well, what they're doing. And so when the thing that pisses me off, when I raise any kind of issue about that, and I go, they're just completely making these creative decisions or retconning their IP to fit in with their commercial and their marketing decisions. And to me, I've seen that happen before, because that's what happens when the sales team gets a hold of the IP, and then they get to say, well, we could sell like 20 of these models in a box if you would just change this part of the history of these particular things. And then that'll mean that like when you're playing them, you've got to have 20 models instead of 10 models because you just rewrote the history to be 20 models. And so they're making business decisions, are making creative decisions for the IP or for the artists or for the writers or for whoever. And that's when things get contrived. That's just one example of what I'm talking about here, is like when you've got guys who have very wildly popular IP, or they got really great ideas, and then either their audience or the sales team starts making the decisions for them, and then they compromise. And maybe they're making a lot of money, but everybody says, well, Star Wars is dead. Well, yeah, it's dead because you brought this thing back from life, and there's no reason for you to be making any more of these movies because there's nobody there with any great ideas. You're just doing it to do it because there's fans and they want it, and you might as well let the fans, write the thing. Like, I really enjoy, and people are gonna throw shit at me for saying this, I really enjoyed the Solo movie. I thought that was really good.
I've never seen it.
I thought it was really good, and I also liked Rogue One. I thought those were really good ones. And as I understand it, Rogue One was like fan fiction that actually became canon.
And the thing about what's funny is with Star Wars is that when they decided to do the whole new series, is that there have been all these novels written by, debatable, but in my humble opinion, Shadows of the Empire was a great novel because Steve Perry, who is the author of it, understood that if you're going to get rid of Han Solo, you have to put in another Han Solo archetype in his place.
Yep.
And that's something that George Lucas completely fumbled the football on the prequels. He completely fumbled the football. There's no Han Solo character in the prequels. So Steve Perry created this character called Dash Rendar, and he conceived of the character while listening to Elvis Presley songs, right? So he's thinking of this kind of bad boy, scoundrel type character who's like Han Solo when he was writing him up. But he understood that. So I'm thinking, if they're going to make movies, they could have done that. But like you were saying, they're constrained by ideology. Their ideology dictates that Han Solo must die. Luke must die. All the old stuff must die. Everything must be purged. It kind of reminds me of what I don't know if you saw Endgame. I finally saw it without having to pay for it. I won't say how. In a theater, but Thanos is talking about how he's going to kill everyone in the universe because you can't have anybody who remembers what life was like before the world you're going to create, because then they might look back nostalgically and fight for that world. It's the same thing with Star Wars. Like, you can't have characters who remind you of the old Star Wars, because then people will go back to Empire Strikes Back or the original Star Wars and be like, wow, these are actually good movies. How did they screw them up? You can't have any of those people in that stuff, right? These are bad characters. Han Solo is a failure. He's a bad guy. Luke Skywalker is this cynical jackass, and even like Mark Hamill hates him. He's like, that's not the character I played in the original series.
I was going to say this is like, I was just reading, and now I don't know how familiar you are with different, like, let's just say, I think Silver Era or not Golden Era, but Silver Era comic artists. There's one guy named Michael Golden. I've met him on a couple of occasions. Really great guy. Very much like he knows his talent and he knows his business, and he goes down to it. I was reading an interview with him recently, and he was saying that he wished that we could get back to stories where there was a definable good guy and a definable bad guy, because we don't have that anymore. It's like the bad guy always has some kind of cope, right? He's always got some kind of like for instance, like the Joker in Batman, right? The Heath Ledger, like he was the hero of that show.
Are you talking about the one with Michael Keaton?
No, I'm talking about the one with Heath Ledger.
Interesting.
Dark Knight.
That is interesting. And what's funny is, I think, and this is where we have to apply red pill philosophy to this, because if you're thinking of it from that perspective, you have this conflicted, dualistic viewpoint of the bad guy, where he's evil, but you want to have sex with him and procreate his children. Like, if you're writing about it from a blue pill feminist perspective, you like the whole 50 Shades of Rape stuff. Shades of Grey stuff. It's the same thing, where they're trying to portray a stalker, creeper guy in a sexy light. It's the same thing with the villains. But I think the other part of it is they're it's not pro, it's anti. As people were saying of the last social justice warrior, The Last Jedi, it was a film that was intended to destroy legends, myths. You can't have heroes, they're problematic. You need to have it all ruined. And so you have to make a film that completely delegitimizes them in the end, where somebody goes, oh, I love Luke Skywalker. And you're like, oh, he was a horrible guy at the end. Or I love Han Solo. He was a crappy dad, right? He was a failure and he dies at the end, right? You can't admire him in the previous films. So you have to make films about who he truly was in the new films that completely discredit anything that you might admire in the previous films. I think you've even touched on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and then of course he's killed by his son too, who's
exactly
realistic, depressed. You know, it's I saw it this way as, and I actually I got myself into trouble because I think I gave away the movie, but this was back when the first, or I should say, whatever it is, the first of the new films came out, and that's the one where Kylo Ren kills Han Solo. And I said, well, that is symbolic of this new ideology or this new way of thinking about Star. Like, this is the fans actually killing off that old guard, and they start with the character that embodies that masculine ideal that they know nothing about, so they have to kill it off.
Right.
So he's this, he's the guy that says, she says, "I love you," and he says, "I know." That's what they want to kill. That's like I think I said this in the last show, is like there's no more Captain Kirks, there's no more Han Solos, there's no more Indiana Jones. It's interesting that Harrison Ford played both of those. There's no more of those. Those were the last real action heroes. I mean, there was, you could argue, I guess, Arnold Schwarzenegger, but Arnold Schwarzenegger was sort of a parody of that character. And
I would say James Bond
away from him, but like he wasn't the actor that Han Solo, or that Harrison Ford was with Han Solo. And so here you have this old school devil may care alpha guy who in any other light might look like he's bullying Princess Leia. He might look like he's bullying, like there's that scene in The Empire Strikes Back where he kind of steals a kiss from her real quickly, right, and they're trying to repair the Millennium Falcon, and then 3PO comes in and says, "I fixed it," or some shit like that.
Right? Thank you very much.
They split up for a second there. Like, people were seriously saying that was rape. That was,
oh my God. Well, I was in DC and I found a picture of that famous sailor who was kissing the nurse on V. And they're like, today this would be construed as sexual assault. I was just thinking, okay, guys, you want to have that world, fine. Have the world, but don't bitch about it. Right? Don't complain about it when girls are whining where all the real men have gone. You deserve the crap that you deserve. Like that's where I just say, understand where you're going. And of course they don't listen, because shock. They don't listen ever. Ever listen. They never listen. Ever, 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 ever. That's like, if there's an iron rule of like 101 or whatever, they never ever listen. But it's the same thing with Han Solo, where you have a character who's they got to kill him, but then they got to kill even the blue. I wouldn't say blue pill guy, but they got to kill Luke, because again, he's not worshiping women in the show. In the movies, he's trying to become a Jedi. He wants to become like his father. I think that there's something idealistic but even noble about that. You're trying to live after your dad. His entire narrative has nothing to do with women for the most part. The only time when he gets defensive is when his dad's saying, "I'm going to turn your sister to the dark side." The one you just realized exists. But that's like, Luke has no romance in his story whatsoever. So people are saying that he's the Delta whatever he is.
Right. Just so they have to plug him into whatever archetype that they see.
Right. But I would just say he's that guy that a lot of men would look at and say, he's the guy who has a mission that has nothing to do with romance or women. Whereas Han Solo is the guy who ends up just dragging romance along with everything that involves his life, because he's the He's the jerk boy who just attracts women like flies to, you know, manure or whatever.
Yeah, and I know that they're trying to make Poe Dameron into, and it's not working. And you know why it's not working? Because it's contrived. Because that's what we're supposed to think. And he's still like respectful of female authority, right? He still wants to play by the
HR
rules.
lady.
Yeah. Hey, that was, you know, that's when I realized I was done with Star Wars. When I saw purple-haired Laura Dern in that role, and I'm like, it's over.
Well,
it's just over.
I mean, it was the same, and that's what kind of convinced me to not watch Captain Marvel when she's like, oh, you know, white man, I don't need to talk. I was just like, you know what, guys, I'm done. I can watch this stuff in legal but free ways that are known unto me and God and that alone. But I don't have to pay you guys money to watch this stuff anymore. One, I can just, if it needs be, I can wait till it comes out on Redbox or whatever for free. But it drives me nuts that what kills me is that all these they're taking good stories and ruining them. And so we gotta wait.
They're vehicles. They're vehicles for a message and a narrative.
Right, and we gotta wait until it's not even like the Soviets, where they at some point occasionally made good art, like the Patokan. They came up with a bunch of good films that revolutionized film. The Untouchables had a bunch of scenes that were based on Soviet propaganda films. Same thing with Germans. I mean, Star Wars, if we're talking about Star Wars, was based, a lot of those scenes in A New Hope was based off of the German propaganda film that came out in the 30s. But the point is, at least they did good art, but this is just bad art conveying bad values. And we got to wait until this whole narrative has died and the powers that be are crushed before we can actually see good art again in this section of the world, or at least Hollywood, where all the money is. Because these guys soy boys, losers, gammas, whatever you want to call whatever you want to call them, they're controlling all the money and they're coming up with crappy films. So you have this whole era, like look at the 80s. Everybody talks about nostalgia, Ready Player One and all this other stuff. That's because there was good movies made back then, good films, good music, good art. It was just that era, that decade came out with good stuff. And you guys were alive. I was kind of on the coattails of that. Like, you guys can talk about it. I'm kind of preaching to the choir right now.
Back when shit was good. Well, you know, it's the same thing you're talking about with respect to the reason why we go back to these old, I don't even think it's so much nostalgia as it is they're out of ideas. They don't know how, like was it Lord of the Rings? Fantastic. Thank God, you know, Peter Jackson stuck, you know, faithful.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Because I could see how that could get really out of hand otherwise. But and I'm hoping, and now here's the real test. I know that they're shooting Dune right now, and it could hardly be any worse than the one that was made in the 80s. But no one has ever been able to do that classic story justice. I'm worried that they're going to turn it into, like, if you know anything about Dune, then you know about the Ben Gesserit, like, chicks, the women. It's like girl power way back in 1965. That's when Herbert wrote that. Frank Herbert wrote them in, and that was the sort of femme power side of that whole thing. I will guarantee you, if they screw it up, it will be because they overdo that part of Dune, because they want something that they can insert their narrative into. So they go back and they do an all-female version of Ghostbusters. They do I was just looking at this today, the all-female cast of the new Terminator.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
It's like, okay, it's dead. Let it die.
Lord save us.
They do the feminine version of Mad Max. Or they
see, that's what makes their art so bad, as opposed to if you look at a lot of the Soviet propaganda art and even, you know, the German propaganda, they weren't trying to mimic anyone. They were taking their values and being genuine with it. But what these jackasses do is they're trying to trick people into thinking that they're coming up with old art they're trying to, like, shamelessly and incompetently shove in a very, like, they're trying to take a a square peg and fit it into a round hole. Their values, like with the Ghostbusters, there's no need to make a new Ghostbusters. Ben-Hur, there's no need to make a new Ben-Hur. Charlton Heston was just fine back in the 50s. You don't need to make any of the new Terminator stuff. You don't need to remake any of the Lord of the Rings. You don't need to remake any of these other things. You're only doing that because what you're saying is the values conveyed in those previous versions are not cool anymore, and we need a new version. It's the same thing with this bull crap with every freaking. First of all, Disney is just devoid of creativity. Like, you could take every ounce of creativity in that company and it wouldn't fit into a thimble. And that's why they're doing all these live action films, and they're like, oh well, we got to cater to a new diverse audience, so that's why we're going to make Ariel a person, a girl of color or whatever, and we're going to do the Lion King, we're going to do all this other crap because we can't come up with any new stories. And even the Lion King wasn't a new story. It was based on Hamlet, which also was not based on an original story. He took it from a previous story. So, but guys,
what they do is they have to go back to those because they can't create anything new. So they have to find some way to put this narrative out into the wild, I guess. That's how they do it. They go back and they take old IP and old franchises and they reconstruct them in a feminist SJW narrative, so that as I said, that becomes its vehicle. So they throw out, the new version of this, but it's new only for, the sensibilities of this generation. And that, of course, destroys the creative.
Right. Like, what? This is a question I've asked people. Why do we need a new Beauty and the Beast? If like the animated film that I grew up on and I was very nostalgic on, and then I took the red pill and I'm like, holy hell, this is not. I don't know how I feel about this anymore. But then they decided to do the remake with what's her name, the bitchy looking face girl from Harry Potter, and then they decide they're going to remake Lion King, and then they're going to remake Aladdin, and they're going to remake Little Mermaid. It's like, guys, do you not have an original bone in your body? And I know people who I have people, I know people. I have my people who work in Hollywood, and I can't say what they tell me because we'd be banned, but basically nepotism and anti-creativity is so rampant in that area, where if you're not connected properly and you've got the most original idea in the world, you get shown the door. But if you're somebody's cousin, you're going to get your crappy script is going to get, and also if it conforms to the feminine imperative and the blue pill and whatever, they're going to buy that. But it's so frustrating that they're destroying this stuff because, you got they're basically brainwashing an entire generation. Oh, you don't need to watch this old version of this. You can watch the new version of this. Because that version, it's so freaking communist and Soviet-esque about everything that's being done.
Changing the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, they have to go back and they do that because there's zero creativity in this generation. That's why I keep saying, if you want to be wildly successful, I mean, look at Steel Panther, look at Stranger Things. Stranger Things, I don't know whether or not they're sort of inserting that narrative in a little bit, like maybe the fandom has finally caught up with it. But when it first came out, it was all about, well, of course, the nostalgia side, but it was all about telling a really good story. And I think that that's what writers really need to focus on right now, is focus on the story, do it unapologetically, and don't do it because you feel like you have to have a strong female lead, or you feel like you have to do these things to appease that particular audience, because in doing so, you will end up just sounding like everybody else. If you write the next Captain Kirk, if you write the next Han Solo, if you write the next like hero's journey kind of thing, and you do it in, you don't even, I'll tell you what, you won't even have to be all that original about it. You just have to write it in opposition to the zeitgeist of what's going on right now, and you will in some way succeed. I don't know if you'll be wildly popular, but you will stand out in a crowd of, mayonnaise, because that's all it is right now. It's just freaking mayonnaise.
Right.
So, I
read delicious tacos. Good God.
Yeah. Really good.
Yeah.
Well, and I would say that it's not even just about selling books or making money. You know, obviously you want to make money. Like, let's not let's not kid ourselves, but it's about creating good art that transcends or it goes above any money that you make off of it. Or at least that's how I have a very hard time writing a book where it would make money, but it would convey a value or concept or theme that I don't like. And that's why I never could go back to being with a publisher. I'd say, I'm not changing anything in this book. You either take it exactly as it is, you know, grammatically, spelling, whatever, but major story structures, we're not changing it. Nobody's going to do that at this point. And so I think what we need is just a generation of artists who are basically the new wave of nonconformists. It's just back then it was dressing up like a girl and singing about the devil back in the 80s. Nowadays it's saying that a guy doesn't worship his girlfriend. That's kind of the new radical thing.
I find it interesting that we live in an era right now where the younger generation looks up to people like Jordan Peterson for telling them to stand up straight. You know, put your chest out,
make your bed, and wipe and
wash your ass, whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like, are you that desperate? I can do that for you, and you can give me $12,000 a month in your Patreon for my Patreon. I'm like, good God.
See, today that's a radical thought. That's because this generation has no direction. They have no purpose. And people say, well, they're searching for meaning. No, meaning's whatever the heck. You know, that's a container word. They don't have, they don't have any purpose. They don't know what to do with themselves. And so, and imagine this: you're fed on this steady diet of bullshit SJW Disney narrative from the time you're 5 years old, and now you're 25 right now. And that's all you like for me to say, hey, go write the next Captain Kirk. They don't even know who I'm talking about. They don't even know who Han Solo is. Oh, he's the guy that Kylo Ren killed, right? That's who it is to them, because they have no concept of that archetype. So when you see that archetype, or when you see that, you know, that character style or whatever, that's a novel thought to them, and they can't explain why that guy is, oh man, I really like him, he's a badass, he's funny.
Yeah.
I don't understand that because they've never had that explained to them.
My hope is that the books, Guns of Navarone, Where Eagles Dare, Ice Station Zebra, all these books that this guy wrote, I can't remember his name exactly. I should, because I've read his books so many times, but they're not in print anymore. And I'm hoping that there's a day when genuinely masculine books are so popular that they go back in print. Because I have some of them, I don't have a lot of them, but it's just, it's sad that, because that's what hooked me on masculine books. I was reading about these guys who were not superheroes in a comic book sense, but just their willpower, their will to win, to be winners, to be the alpha male in that context was so great. They could do things that most men could not do. And I was reading that when I was a kid. I was like, I want to be that guy. I want to be that man.
That's exactly why comic books were so popular, because who were comic books for? They were for young boys, is what they were for. You know, and that's why Spider-Man was a big deal, because Spider-Man was just like them. He was a teenage kid who had these special powers and they could relate. Even Captain America, you know, he went from this skinny little chump to being Captain America, right? And so it's these guys that they can relate with, who come into these, you know, extraordinary powers. And so, you know, there's never been anything more conventionally masculine than comic books, because first of all, it's this masculine ideal of this superpower and being able to use it for good or evil or whatever. You know, it's classic themes like good versus evil. That's why when I was reading Michael Golden talking about how every damn hero in Marvel has to have some tortured past, and that's why he's doing. He's like, no, how about he's just evil and this is the good guy, and they go at it and they fight. Nobody knows how to do that simple a story anymore. It always has to be this you know, Freudian.
Well, the Red Skull, he has no tortured past. He's just He's an evil psychopath who wants to, like he's considered evil by the Nazis, right? So like he's so far that way, and like the Nazis are like, "Whoa, dude, you're going a little too far for us," right?
What gets me is this: is like when like now here we are in 2019. And the Marvel Cinematic Universe has never been more popular. It's like this is the Star Wars of this generation. It is Marvel, and unfortunately, it's been bought out by Disney, which is the evil empire. But so what happens is this is like, and I follow a few comic artists. I'm sure they're probably the same ones you do too, but you get this fandom that is upset that young guys are drawing girls with huge boobs and, you know, hourglass shapes and nice asses, and they're you know, in positions that look like they're porn. Guess what? That's the way that the art form was drawn. That's the way that it has been for forever. I mean, just because you have appropriated that franchise to be your message machine does not mean that the original intent for it changes whatsoever. So like what you're talking about right there is like, you know, back in the 60s when the X-Men came out, or in the 70s, it reflected the time of the 70s. Like we had Luke Cage, and we had, you know, a Power Man, and the Karate Guy. You know, we had a Iron Fist, right? We had the karate was a big, you know, any martial arts was a big deal. They even have the Master of Kung Fu. Right. And then so you move out of the 70s, and it's like you have Dazzler in the 70s, right? And then you move into the 80s, and now you've got like the classic X-Men lineup with, you know, Wolverine and it's everything is like Wolverine and Colossus and Storm and that team. There's never been a more 80s thing. So it's reflecting that time, but in this era, we're going back to all the things that were cool and hoping we can force fit SJW.
Well, kind of what was it? That X-Men thing where Jennifer Social Justice Warrior Lawrence is like, you might as well call it X-Women. Like, dude, are you trying to kill? Are you trying to save this film?
Yes, they are.
Rollo, do you remember a few years ago with the there was a Spider-Woman variant cover where she was crouched down and you could see, and they were social justice warriors, and everyone just lost their mind because there was the hint of labia, or what they thought was. I'm like, what?
Going, yeah,
ridiculous.
Yeah, well, and they did that because, and here's the thing: is like, well, girls read comics too. You know, there's gamer girl. Okay, fine, but guess what? That's where it started. That's what it was originally intended for: young prepubescent, well, you know, adolescent boys who had those fantasies of getting the girl, of being that idealized guy, having that physique. Like and I don't even want to just pick on the sexist side of things. They were talking about how they needed to make like overweight heroes, or they needed to make like a hero that was the cool thing about Professor X, right? He was disabled. He was in a wheelchair, so he could still be a superhero in a wheelchair.
Yeah, he could read minds. And like, what are they going to bring in? Fat Albert?
Or they have like, I mean, but here's the thing: is like the overweight characters were always the villains. Like the Blob. The Blob was a
juggernaut.
Or I just put this out there because this, and you want to talk about art or life imitating art. I'm sure you guys know who Judge Dredd is, right?
Yeah.
Back in the early 80s, when the comic book was actually worth reading, the original 2000 AD comic books had this set of villains that were the fatties. And they were fat people in Mega City who were like protesting so that they could get more food. and it was all about fat pride, and it was all about, you know, big meals for big people.
Isn't that crazy?
And it's exactly what we're seeing today.
Well, and what's funny is in college, like I'm the youngest, I'm the pup of you old people. I remember how that would have been completely fine to make fun of back then, is fat people wanting to be fat. That would have been perfectly fine. But now we got this body positive. It's like all the marketing, art, campaign peoples and HR peoples have been populated by those who in the 1930s we would have stuck in an insane asylum. Like the most mentally ill people possible. I remember that there was that one Sports Illustrated cover. I'm just like, I remember that 1986 or 87 commercial during the holidays where the mom's trying to get something for her son and her husband for Christmas. And the guy's like, oh, you should get him Sports Illustrated. And there's a swimsuit edition and it shows some sexy girl. And she's like, oh, I know they'll love that, right? Like this is the 80s, back when, you know, a wife getting a swimsuit edition for her husband or her son is not considered to be, you know, overly pornographic, but also, you know, oh, this is promoting fat shaming or whatever. Like that it's just, I don't know. Like I said, the 80s was a good era. I wish I was older when it ended.
Well, because there was the Wild West, man. People were trying everything back then because MTV was coming out, and like it was definitely a decade of experimentation. I mean, look at all the cool things that came out of the 80s.
Oh yeah, I'm convinced that the 80s was, in a lot of ways, the apex of American culture and society, because so many good things. And I think, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was saying how many great films came out in 1 year in the 80s. Films that would have won, like any one of them would have won Best Picture in previous years, but they just all came out in the same year. You got, you know, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You've got The Breakfast Club. You've got Red Dawn. Yeah, exactly. You've got Better Off Dead. I know it wasn't the greatest movie, but you've got so many great movies. And I think that part of it also is, like you were saying, they're experimenting. There was 3 O'Clock High, which is a film I watched in film school, that the way they did cinematography. So, and then the music, whatever. But I think it was also, you could say or do anything you wanted back then. You could say what you, in a film or in a song, you could be edgy, and people would be outraged, right? There'd be the moral majority people that would be outraged that you're promoting Satanism or whatever, but they're not going to get you deplatformed within 15 minutes the way they are now. And they're not going to have a mob outside to go murder you and then claim that you're a hate speech, or you're promoting hate crimes, and they had to attack you because you were weaponizing patriarchy or something.
Like, who are you allowed to have as a villain now? What racial? I mean, unless it's like some robot, and even the robot has to express some sort of ideological, you know, antithesis to whatever, you know, the popular culture believes at that time. Like, remember when, what was it? I remember when Die Hard came out, and remember, and it was like the evil South African guys because it was apartheid right back then, and they wanted to throw rocks at apartheid.
That was actually they were basically just thieves. They weren't even terrorists. They weren't political, but I mean, you had, it was even when affecting James Bond, where they didn't really even want to make the Soviet Union the bad guy. It was always some rogue guy within the Soviet Union. Octopussy was an example of that, where they were like, oh, world socialism is going to be achieved peacefully. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Really? You think that you're going to spread socialism peacefully throughout the world? Give me a break. But that's a James Bond. That's supposed to be the edgy guy, you know, who's having sex with women left and right. But, you know, with the Soviet Union, we got to be politically correct or something like that.
Yeah. Well, you know, here's the other thing is that you've got like old archetypes now that you could get away with back. Well, like we were kind of joking around about this, but I was on Donovan's show, and Donovan has that one picture of Piston Honda in the back, Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and I go, you would make that game today.
Oh,
because somebody would just fly off the handle for, like, you know, even Glass Joe. There'd be somebody who was, oh, that's a negative stereotype, you know, or, you know, all of the racial archetypes for the, you know, the guys you had to fight. It was like one white dude who was fighting Piston Honda, and eventually he got to Mike Tyson, right? If you learn moves and everything, but you had to go through every opponent was this racial stereotype, but it was funny and it was cool back then because you know that's just that's where we were. It's like same thing with why is To Kill a Mockingbird a big deal? Why is Mark Twain's work still read in schools today, although maybe it's not anymore? Because
it's read as like 1984 is read. It's read as an instruction manual, not as a warning.
Right. All right, I got to clean. We've been going for like over 2 hours now, so I got to get.
All righty. Okay, guys. Hey, while you're still here, go ahead and hit the like button. It sends the tingles to YouTube's vagina. It gets more coverage for our video. Go ahead and hit subscribe if you haven't, and hit the little notification bell so you can catch our next episode. Rollo, you want to tell everybody where you're found, even though you don't need to?
Sure. You can find me at therationalmail.com. You can read all my great intellectual works.
Subscribe to his Patreon.
all of my great praxeological writings are found there. That's funny you should say Patreon. I've actually started picking back up with my Patreon for my shows that I'm doing right now. I'm doing the Rational Mail 101 with Pat Campbell on Sundays at 4:30 Eastern. And I do take questions and super chats and everything from people during that. I don't have phones open yet. I'm not sure I want to. I might later on. I would need to have somebody to screen phone calls, and I'm not really at that stage yet. I want to focus more on things. But as far as Patreon is concerned, people have been asking me for the audio versions of my podcasts, whether that's my AMAs or that's my stuff with Rule Zero now, or my own stuff. I'm doing that, and I'm offering those to Patreon subscribers. And all you got to do is be at the lowest level, and you can get those for whatever. A lot of people keep saying, I don't know how you do this, but like people will say, I really want the audio version of that because I want to listen to it when I'm in the gym, or I want to listen to it on my commute. I'm like, how on earth are you going to listen to me at the gym? No. So anyways, that's now available on my Patreon. So you can subscribe to that and help me out that way. Other than that, you can find me on Twitter, as most of the 22 people that are or 27 people right now. You can find me at Rollo Tomassi at Rational Mail. That's me.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. This has been a lot of fun, guys.
We need to get together and do the Red Pill ruined my music
or movies. Ruined movies, music, and
right.
Yeah, Red Pill ruined my life.
What we gotta do is next time I come back on, we need to get together like the 5 most like blue pill songs, or the most blue pill movies, or the most blue pill story, or the most blue pill characters.
Yeah.
Of past, like, because so many people can't watch those movies anymore, and that stuff anymore. Like I said, it's like seeing the code in the Matrix. Like, you got to find what epitomizes the worst of the worst. Like, I've been trying. I want to write a blog post about that. Like, what's the worst? Now that I'm red pill and my eyes are open, I can't listen to the stuff that I used to love. What song, what movie, what character epitomizes that understanding now? Like, you used to think it was like the best, and now you go, my God, what was I thinking? It would be great to do something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And what makes it more harder is when the art or the story is actually done really well.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is done well, but the values it's conveying is bad. And I think that's the hardest, is because we associate that with positive or good things, but then you realize, oh, this is subversive. This is damnable.
All right,
Cool.
TJ.
Yeah, TJ, you're next.
All right. You can go to tjmartinell.com. It's going to have links to everything, my books, podcasts, biography, everything else that if you're intelligent enough to explore, you can figure it out.
Thanks for covering for me there, Rob. I kept dropping out.
Yeah, well, you are kind of a dropout. Your turn, Vince.
You still love me, you dumb motherfucker.
Yeah.
Masculine Geek, you find me there. You can go to my Amazon author page and follow me there as well. Pick up my book. Next novella will be coming out at the end of the summer. And that's pretty much it. So thank you for joining us. It's been fun once again. And same time, same bat channel next Wednesday. And we'll also be picking up our cartoon hour sometime in August. So stay tuned for that. Everyone, enjoy your evening. Until next time.
See you around, guys.
Peace.